Well, another dangerous combination is that of the Macho Man Randy Savage and his manager, Sensational Sherry. They have their eyes firmly locked on the World Wrestling Federation Championship, and the Stevious duo is standing by.
Miss Elizabeth, Hulk Hogan, so SummerSlam is finally over and you've managed to stick your nose where it doesn't belong anymore. Hulk Hogan, you sorry excuse for a human, you sorry excuse for a man. How could you ever possibly think that you could hide behind that little pink skirt of Miss Elizabeth? What are you gonna do when you have a one-on-one confrontation with the Macho...
Yeah, freeze frame, Hulk Hogan, yeah, I'm telling you that you are not going to be able to handle the prettiest woman who ever lived. Yeah, and Miss Elizabeth, yeah, your little escapade, yeah, at SummerSlam will never be forgotten, will it, Sensational Sherry?
Oh, Miss Elizabeth, the things that you have done to me, I'm going to rip your person apart, piece by piece, and then...
Hulk Hogan, I'm going to get you, and I'm going to be the World Wrestling Federation champion.
Oh, yeah!
Oh, yeah!
If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I want to talk to you. Friends talking nerdy.
Who do you guys? So you read a lot of sci-fi books, myself included. I know you got into Lord of the Rings from your dad. Mm-hmm. Who's your favorite sci-fi author? Would you say who's the one where you're I picked up the most books from this person, or you see that name and you're dang, that's going to be good.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it's not a woman. It's it's Ray Bradbury's.
Yes,
that is the most magical shit, and the images that I have in my head from that are so different than from anything else that I had ever read before, like the Martian Chronicles.
Yeah,
I remember reading through that and being and that was some of those stories are very scary, like the city swallowing and eating people and tearing them up and all this. But that was the kind of scare that I was I'm really into this actually, because I don't see myself ever being in that situation. So maybe that's why I have an easier time being able to handle it.
Yeah.
But I remember that and his ideas of the future they felt also so close to our own reality sometimes too.
Yeah.
Because they were written so long ago.
Yeah.
So it's the past imagining of where almost our day and age, the year 2000, and what's going to be happening at that point.
Yeah.
So the Martian Chronicles and any of Ray Bradbury's stuff, I find myself frequently going back and just, if you just want to have a nice fantasy sci-fi escape for a little bit, I'll just go read one of his stories, and they're so easy to read too, just so well written, and just beautiful stories and
beautiful.
Yeah.
I always I'll read a paragraph. I'm wait, hold on.
Yeah.
And again.
Yeah.
Wait, no, I did it again. And again.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Have you read Ray Bradbury stuff before?
I have. It's been a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I think I read it early adolescence.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't called me back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know why in particular it didn't. There's some of Heinlein's stuff that I find really interesting. I went through a dystopian binge.
Maybe not the right time to do that.
No, Fahrenheit 451. I read, and for some reason that was not in my school curriculum. I don't know why they kind of cut out the dystopian stuff, but I went Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451, and then some more contemporary stuff. And I just it was a 6-month period, and I literally woke up one day and was I am so terrified and hopeless about existence that I need to stop. I need to cut myself off. But I think it's important to read that sort of thing, because you see these little pieces getting put in place now, and it's not too many more pieces until we're living in one of those worlds.
Yeah.
And those aren't worlds that I want to live in. And like, so you can be like, that's not that bad. Like, okay, fine. A little bit more. Okay, all right. Well, we'll be fine. But then a little bit more and a little bit more, and then all of a sudden there are no books. All of a sudden, I read this one. Gosh, I wish I could remember the title right now, but like, every city has to have seawalls, and it's like, I don't want to live in that world. Like, that is precarious. That is super precarious. And so I think it's been a lot over time, but I kind of gravitate towards that dystopian. Like, I need to like stretch my brain a little bit about like, what don't I want? But I mean, there's some stuff in that too where it's like, I do like this aspect though of the future. Like, I do, if we could get that, like a world where if we could I keep saying like, whoever invents a teleportation device, like, whatever you want human, like, I will give it to you. That would be real sweet. I
think that's why, like, you mentioned that, like, kind of taking those kind of good things from that. I feel like that can kind of, we can bridge that into like that's why Star Trek is so popular too. It's a future where it's like the best of us and all of the best of us.
Picard is coming back.
I know. So we all probably know, especially if you're listening to this, that they announced that they're going to do more Star Trek with Sir Patrick Stewart, and he's going to come back and be Jean-Luc Picard. And he gave this really wonderful, I don't know, have you seen, he gave this like wonderful kind of speech. I guess he was at a convention or something when they were announcing it.
I know, I didn't. I heard that it happened. I didn't hear it.
Yeah, and he was getting really emotional because they were talking about like... He was talking about how, he never thought that he was going to come back to this, but that... that he felt like this was the right time for it. Because of like how he had, I think he said it was some police responder or somebody who told him that like their lives, the things that they saw were so dark and so terrible every single day that when after a really hard day, he would go and pull some Star Trek off the shelf and watch that. And that was the thing that helped him feel like there was hope for humanity. And so he was like, I'm getting goosebumps like thinking about it. And so Sir Patrick Stewart said that story to him just kind of like really even more so solidified to him that like the world needs this right now because of how dark things do seem to be and like all of the things that have been going on. And I think that he's absolutely right that, this is the kind of story, those are the kind of stories that like we want to hear and need to hear right now in our darkest hour, you know, to really kind of get through it. I think that it's wonderful. It's exciting that it's going to be coming back soon.
You say that, and it kind of just reminds me, like, media is like such a double-edged sword. So it's like, okay, we need these great stories, and I need this hope, and I don't need to like read the news and feel horrible and afraid, and then go home and watch something that makes me feel horrible and afraid, and then try and get rid of it by reading something that makes me feel horrible and afraid. And it's so good to have something that like, okay, good, like this is what I'm striving for. And again, like these goals, like this is what I want to see. Like, oh, cool, this is how I put it into action and stuff like that. And there's also the issue. I mean, if we're talking about women in the genre, it's also representation, right? And so there's that aspect to it too, where I'm like, okay, but I want honesty. Like, I want honesty, but I don't want it to be perpetuated. And so like there's always like this, okay, how do you make me happy as a viewer? Because what is it that I want to see?
What do you mean by being perpetuated?
So like a big thing is if you watch like World War II movies, right? Like it's just a bunch of white men storming a beach, correct? Like where are women? Where are people of color? Like where is that coming into play? And the idea is like, oh, well, they weren't really there. And it's like, great. So all I see on screen are like more white men. Like I'm not there. I don't see anyone representing me. And so kind of perpetuating it where it's like this notion where you're getting that empowerment of like, look what we did for history. And I'm like, okay, but like what about all of the other people that we just didn't visibly see there? And so that's something that I get too. And it's so hard. It's like, man, I want the feel good. I want to feel good, and I want to be happy, and I also want a lot of honesty as well.
Yeah.
And so I just saw, okay, Get Out is a big one, right? All of that. And it was like, oh man, like it scared me on like just such a different kind of level, but I also appreciated like the honesty that I got from it. And then I just saw Black Klansman with my friend, and oh my god, I had to like try and not. Like, I was just like, okay, hold on, keep it together, oh my gosh, and I don't think I've ever rolled my eyes that much. Like, I mean, I grew up, like, you know, SoCal in San Diego, definitely like that wannabe Valley girl, oh my god, like, and yeah, and I don't think I've ever rolled my eyes so much in like a 2-hour span than I did when I was watching that movie, because I was just like, oh, okay, dang, like, okay, I got the honesty, but oh man, I don't want to hear this, and yeah, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I've seen it, yeah.
Not in the genre, for sure, it's definitely like based on true events, but definitely got me. Yeah, that was hard. I had to like stop for like 5 minutes after I left the theater with my friend, and she's like, well, what do you think? And I was like, we're gonna pause, hold on, because I need to digest and then share, and I love stuff like that. So that's a big thing for me. Like Black Mirror as well, cannot binge watch. Cannot do it.
Isn't like The Handmaid's Tale also kind of in that same sci-fi sort of like dystopia?
Yes. I wrote, so being, you know, women in gender studies, I write a lot of papers, and it's fun because I get to really dive in deep, and I get a lot of fun resources that I never would have found on my own. And I found an interview, and apparently Margaret Atwood said that when she was writing that, she was very, very, very strict in the fact that she would not write or represent anything that had never happened in history. So while it didn't happen like that, and it wasn't all together, and it wasn't A, B, and C together as A, B, and C, like everything that you're seeing are things that have happened in history. So let me tell you, like, I'm not a very emotional person, but there are times when I've actually had to pause it because I'm crying, because I'm just really upset with like what I'm seeing and what's going on, and then it's made so much worse by the fact that like there's the honesty. It's true. Yeah, I'm getting a very honest story here, in a way, in a respect, and that definitely gets me. But I like things like that. I like to feel like, okay, good, you're getting me thinking. I'm emotionally invested. The fact that I would like actually cry and like do this. Okay, you got me. You have a good story.
I think I'll watch it at some point, but I definitely have a little bit of an apprehension to it because of that, you know, like I know it's going to stab me in the heart and make me really upset, and it's going to hurt me as a woman.
Yes.
And like, yeah, like you said, you know, we experience so much like turmoil throughout the day and then in the world, and it's like, do I also want my media to do that to me too? And I've had so many people like kind of poo on me for not being like strong enough and like wanting to put my head in the sand, but I'm like, but I just, you know, for the couple hours a day that maybe I can watch some TV, I want to laugh.
Yeah.
You know, but I do want to be challenged, and I do want to challenge myself to put myself outside of my comfort zone with my media, and watch things like that are difficult to watch because they're important stories that need to be heard, and you know, they need to be told and heard and experienced. And so I do want to do that, you know, as often as I can, but I definitely feel like I do it less than the average person. And that's something that I sometimes I'm like made to feel bad about it, because that's the day we live in now, that everyone's just like watching this really intense stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just want to watch New Girl,
like,
and laugh, and that's it.
No, like, to your credit, I mean, so I am one of those people, like, I definitely do that to myself, and I also like tune out, you know, like, I like to have fun things, I just like to watch it as a fun fantasy, and I don't feel incredibly invested all the time, and it doesn't feel good, but I do torture myself a lot with things like that. And I have to say that the thing that I feel isn't considered when a woman is given that criticism around things like A Handmaid's Tale and things like that, is that you're not considering not using this term lightly. You're not considering like the PTSD that's associated and things that can be triggered.
Right.
So like if you have gone through those situations before, or something similar, or that kind of violence, that kind of sexual violence, yeah, maybe it hits you even harder, because now I have to do that to myself. I have to watch this and experience this, and I feel for this character, and I've been there. And it's just, that's not fair. It's not fair to put that pressure on someone to do that.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, there are some shows that just hit, I think, too close to home. Like, everyone raved about Breaking Bad. Loved it so much. And for me, like, I watched a few episodes and I was like, I've seen this lived.
Yeah.
I've seen it lived, and I don't need to watch a fictionalized version of it because I know the reality.
Yeah.
And I think it was really well done, and like a testament to that is the fact that I didn't want to watch it.
Yeah. Agreed.
But I think, yeah, there is this aspect of certain things where it's like, I live that. I don't need to see it. Like, it doesn't expand my imagination or my horizons. It doesn't help me cope.
Yeah.
And so, like, why would I invest in this thing? Whereas I can view this thing that either, like, gives me pleasure, gives me thought. And one of the best things about sci-fi is I think it gives you this, like, here's a thing that we confront now, but here's enough distance to see it in a way where maybe there's a different avenue. And sometimes that's the hopelessness of dystopia, where it's like, here's how bad it could get. Okay, we're not there yet. Great. So we got some options. Or maybe it's the Star Trek, the idealism of like, okay, I see where we could be, and so I want to work towards that. But I think that's kind of like that great sphere that sci-fi gives, is like, there are options between here and like the best and the worst of the worlds that could be. But there is some stuff that I think for all people, it can be just too unnecessarily close to home, and it's not inspiration, it's not guidance, it's not therapy. It's just
it makes you need therapy.
Reliving the shit.
And so you're crossing into that territory of like shock value. And that's where like there was a handful of episodes of Game of Thrones that I just refused to watch, and I'm sure all of us know what we're talking about. There were rape scenes, there was killing of children, all of this kind of stuff that I remember hearing from people that this was happening. And I thought about it, and I thought, like, I'm not going to watch that. I'm just not going to watch that. I don't need to see that. And also like using these sort of things to like progress the plot lines of women is just that old tried out, sort of thing. Like, she got raped, and so it made her like want to go on a rampage or whatever now or something. And so even using those things as plot devices and something that is as a driving force behind women is just like, it's just a cop out. And so that is something that it's not like it's something that happens, but it's not as like, you could be more dynamic with what your backstory is of a character or something. And so there was I remember I stopped watching Game of Thrones for a while. I was like boycotting the show, and then told everybody, I was like, I'm not watching this anymore, because already up to that point I was already just like, man, I am seeing some violence that I don't know if I want to watch in the first place, if it's necessary. Like I'm just kind of getting sick of this violence. And then I heard those things were happening. I was like, I'm done with this. And then as the show progressed more, people were like, no, but like, okay, Daenerys is like coming up now. Like these women characters, they're like making a comeback. You should start watching it again. And so I started to watch the show again, and the show did have this shift. And I think maybe I've heard people say it was like when they were breaking from where the books were or something, where the show started to transform into something more, where you had these characters who were just these women who were just being abused constantly, finally getting their time to like come out and like be the dragon queen and be like all of these characters. These are like really, really, really strong characters.
This is also when we're talking about like perpetuating these things. So like you're using like female bodies to drive these stories because you're abusing them. It's not that like their agency drives this story, that they get to do all this badass shit because they're badass girls. No, like you're using these things to perpetuate it. And then when you're kind of like, okay, great, like, so I want to talk about like anti-rape, can we address this? This is a huge thing. And people were like, well, yeah, but like millions of people watch it on HBO, so like, why do you care? And it's like, that's TV, not real life. And you're kind of disassociating, and you're not being honest when you use those to like drive storylines. You're not being honest about like how that affects those people. And I will admit, I don't care. Come for me. I don't care. I got through about 4 episodes of Game of Thrones when it first started, and I was like, I can't with the incest. I can't with like these killing of children. I can't. I cannot. And I was at a point where I was like, no, I don't find it entertaining to kind of like see these and try and work through them or try and understand them. I was at a point where I was like, no, not today. And so I definitely understand where you're coming from, and I don't feel that I've missed out, but it's only because I don't know, and that's okay. And I've heard that like that whole like the whole dragon, like once the dragons came, I'm like, dang it, I want to get there. Because do I ever want to see that? I do, but like, man, I don't have the strength to get to that point. I just don't. I have a strength for a lot of things, but like, you've definitely hit a pressure point for me with that.
Yeah.
And same with Breaking Bad. Like I can't. Like I've lived in El Cajon, Santee. I've seen this played out. I saw the first episode, and I was like, this is just real life. This isn't entertainment. Like I could literally walk outside and see this. So we're not going to do this. And my husband loves it, and he's like, oh, I can't believe you don't like it. And I'm like, I'm glad you do. Clearly, you grew up differently than I did, but like, no, I'm going to find something else, and I'm sure it's great. But like, okay, cool. Not everything for everyone, and I can respect that. Definitely makes me an outsider, though. Yeah, I'm like, I'm the outlier on these things. That's fine. I know.
Game of Thrones. Let's just deal with this one.
Do it.
I read the books, and I loved the books for the politics. Like,
that's what I heard.
The politics, the societies that were built, the cultures, like, are really incredible. And there is some really questionable stuff that happens, and there's. So it's interesting because after the first book I almost stopped reading because my 3 favorite characters died and they were all men. Okay. And so like talking about women and like I didn't, there are a lot of women in literature that I don't identify with because again, I'm going to rely back on an old saying, but the things you hate in others most are the things that you hate most in yourself. And so I think there were things in the women that I was like, I don't like that is a part of who I am. I don't like that I rely on this or that. Like, that's not a great thing, but it is a reality. And I think that the way that men are sometimes characterized are the things that I want to identify with more. But, the story building and the politics in it are incredible, but I couldn't watch the show because I felt like it devalued the characters so much. Particularly the women. Even though my 3 favorite characters were not women, the way that I saw them subtly change the plot line in the show compared to the books, I was like, you just completely changed and abolished that character and everything interesting about them. And that was really frustrating for me. And so I didn't watch the show because I had absolutely no interest in doing so.
And see, my mom said the same thing. She's like, I really need you to read them. I think you'll have a much different feeling of it.
That's really unfortunate. Because I was just like, man, George R. R. Martin hates women, but now it's like
maybe not.
You're like telling me that like really it's not as like terrible in the books.
Well, it's brutal. It's still there's still incest. There's still killing children. There's still rape. But that's life. That's kind of it's not.
But it's not.
But there are also fierce women. There are fierce women, and there are intelligent women, and there are politically savvy women, and it's more complex. And I think that the show falls back on
old archetypes and
effects. Special effects.
Gotcha. I wonder if there's
dragons.
The dragons.
Not a sucker for dragons too. Okay, like you got me.
I wonder if that like kind of like because definitely like the beginning of the show was much more I had a hard time the whole entire time I was always hating it. I'm like, I'm only watching this because all my friends are watching it and I want to be able to have that conversation and not be like, why haven't you watched the show? So I'm watching the show.
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure completely. And I'll say it. I watched it because of peer pressure. And then once like in this last season things have sort of changed, and that makes me wonder now if there's some direct correlations to how media, the rest of the world is kind of dealing with women in our like superhero and genre stuff. Seeing like Wonder Woman and Black Panther and all these sort of things, like they were in progress while this stuff was being worked on. And I don't know, maybe there's some kind of like, maybe there's starting to be a shift, hopefully. maybe.
Yeah.
You know, with what we're seeing, maybe that's why they changed it a little bit or got wiser. People complained about it enough or something. You know, they're like, okay, stop doing this. Can we see the women actually like doing something cool?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But that, I think maybe if we want to like segue into sort of like how we are looking at things now in our popular media.
Yeah. That's actually exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Because I think a big thing with me is representation. So, like, that's something that definitely gets me. Like, how am I being represented? How is something that I care about being represented? How do I see myself in this? Things like that. And someone that I greatly respect was like, yeah, that's beautiful and all that, like, you know, XYZ films were made and this representation was out there, but there's still true equality that we should be out here fighting for. And, like, I'm happy that you wanted to spend some time and, like, kind of get to lay back and see something really badass like Black Panther, but like I'd like to see more equality and not just show, because you're still kind of making money off these things. And I was like, man, I agree, but like I have to reconcile within myself that like I still think that representation is important. I still think like seeing women driving plot lines without it being to benefit the man, the centric male plot line is important. Because just think about like everything that we do day to day in our lives that like was influenced by this. So like Xena, like maybe you don't dress up like her now, but like just think about like the fact that like, yeah, you do, right?
So, I still do. Every year, a couple times a year.
Exactly. Like, those things are still like within you, and like this idealist, like still like, okay, cool. So like I read this and I don't want to go down this line, and I want to get back to this kind of Star Trek, like, man, this could be the future, and that. And so I think that representation is really important. But the question is where are we now? Like, you know, like how far have we come? Are we using, and I always use this barometer, and yes, okay, like I just like to broadly use that. Where are we at? Where are we going? And then the other thing that I'd like to acknowledge is like pushback. So like having a female doctor for Doctor Who. Like I was honestly like appalled because people are like, why does it matter? Why does she have to be a woman? And I was like, well, then why are you bitching? Because then why does it have to be a man? And I think that's something that gets me, because people are like, oh, it's a crusade. And I'm like, no, I'm not really on a crusade. I'm just trying to take a moment to kind of share like, hey, this is my perspective. And you've spent how many hundreds, thousands of years seeing yourself as that main character and that hero, and 3 people that are your favorite characters that you identify with, that you care about, that you're invested in, are men, and you don't even see yourself. I think that's greatly important. And I'm really curious what everyone else's opinions of like, okay, so where are we seeing ourselves now? Because, you know, we're grown up. You know, it's been a few decades. Well, chronologically speaking, as an adult, but you know, and like I still, of course, like I still have such a strong connection to these things from when I was a child. And they're media, and it's there's very few, because I want to focus. I want to try and not find those men that I identify with, and the only reason being that I love that they're there. I think it's beautiful, and like representation pushes society forward. But where's the change? Where's the diversity? Where's the effect?
I think it's still a work in progress, as it has been and always will be. But I definitely think that we're heading in the right direction. You know, when you, I think enough people have been very vocal about things. You know, we have like these Marvel movies, and like Black Widow's the only one who hasn't gotten her own movie, and that is constantly talked about how preposterous that is. Or like there will be this merchandise that's on sale, and she won't even be in the shirts where there's like 10 of the superheroes in these movies, and like Black Widow isn't even there, but she's a star in this movie. You know, so people notice when these characters are left out, or when you don't have the toys in the store, you know, of those female characters, or Rey from Star Wars. Now you're having like an action figure in like a set or something of all the main Star Wars characters. You know,
think about what these women are asked about their characters when they get to do these interviews. So you got to play Black Widow. You're like this kick-ass woman, and like what question are the interviewers asking her? So what was it like getting into that suit?
What was your diet like? All this kind of stuff. These like terrible.
That was me a couple of nights ago, nonstop.
It was funny because men go through the same thing. Like, Jackman was like, I'm not doing another Wolverine because it's too brutal on my body. And it's like,
Yeah.
But they don't talk about that as much.
Yeah.
I think some, if you have a noticeable transformation, like, what's his face, Chris Pratt, going from becoming like Parks and Rec dude to like Guardians guy, like people I think were talking to him about that because it was such a major noticeable, like you went from chubby potato to like this like
we love your Chris Pratt,
really handsome, beautiful, like fit dude.
Yeah.
How did you like do that? But that's also a question that's like, that is kind of worth asking. You completely transformed your whole body for this role.
Dedication.
That dedication that's in there. And so, like, if someone's going through a major transformation, either up or down or whatever on your scale, like, that's what we're talking about. But it is definitely more skewed towards women when that's happening.
Yeah.
But I think that, like, I've been really liking hearing these stories about, like, the Wonder Woman success and, like, Black Panther success, but particularly with the new Wonder Woman that's going to come out. I think there was some news about how Gal Gadot, like, said she was not going to, like, sign on if this man... Do you know about this story? There was some man who had, like, questionable... Do you know about this?
Yeah, I heard about that.
I don't know the exact details of, like, what it was, but there's some, like, man that was, like... She was, like, not have him on this...
Yeah.
For some reason, he did something terrible, and so, and then I'm not going to sign on to this if he's on there, as a producer or something like that, And so she was using her power, in such a way that was like, and she also used her power to make sure she was getting paid as much as all the other male, superheroes have been paid in like the DC movies, but she was using that power to utilize making these sort of changes and putting her foot down.
I want to touch on that, but I want to...
Did a little research. It was Brett Ratner, and he's a scumbag, so...
So that's something... I think that's something that's like... You don't hear about as much as like a woman finally going, you know what, I'm confident enough in like how important I am to this franchise and this company to be able to put my foot down on a very big decision and say like, you can't get away with this because I said so. And I'm your bread making, money winner here in this situation.
And like when that happened, like I'm not gonna lie, part of me felt nervous because I don't think she's replaceable as Wonder Woman, but like look at how many Batman we've had. So and this is Hollywood, and dude, that's like movie magic. It could happen. Like she really like unfortunately, a way to describe this is she went out on a limb to do what was right, and she really potentially risked her job because she had to value herself enough to say it and understand that like hopefully they understood her value too to agree to it. And we see that too with like wage equality, like not within like the scope of the draw that we're talking about, but a story that I heard about the show called The Crown, right? Yeah, centered around a woman. But you have a female lead. The story is about her, and yet she was getting paid less than her male co-stars.
And like Matt Smith and them.
And the fact that like she didn't actually, the way I understand it, she didn't try to advocate for herself for equal pay. They advocated for her because she was like, I don't want to rock the boat. I like my job. And we saw with like X-Files as well. They were like, we're not going to come back for more seasons if we're not getting paid equal money. Like people want to see Gillian Anderson just as much as they want to see David Duchovny. And like having to fight for that, like the fact that David Duchovny had to say, I won't sign on if you don't pay her correctly. I like that. Like someone was standing up, but I'm also like, let's
why did it have to come to that?
Why did it have to come to that? That's also kind of an indicator of where we are. Like we are still,
there's still a risk factor even in somebody like Gal Gadot being Wonder Woman, who is now like completely an icon. There still is that tiny bit of fear that they could say no, bye bye.
We'll pay someone else less.
We'll get somebody
else to do it for cheaper.
And people, will still make money off of that thing. So like that risk taking. But I think her making those kind of like movements like that, it's important, obviously. And
I'm gonna like guess that she was empowered by the fact that she was Wonder Woman. Like she was probably like totally empowered by Wonder Woman to be like, no, we're gonna do what's right. Don't do this to me. And that's again representation. That's why it's so important.
I really am happy to see that become so successful and that they're making more, because I've definitely seen way more kids, little girls and sometimes boys wearing Wonder Woman outfits instead of your typical princess and tutu outfits, which are still wonderful. Like I will wear like princess dresses every day, but it's nice that now there is like more of a variety to choose from, and a little girl can be that girl that she sees on the screen and do, and see herself in that as a young child. And I think we're going to get that with the Doctor Who stuff too.
I am so excited.
We're going to see a lot of kids. Like I've seen so many children dress up as the Doctor, and now there's going to be little girls that are like, I can be the Doctor, but not be like a girl version of the Doctor. I can be the Doctor, you know? Yeah. No, I have to just be the companion.
Yeah.
That is something that power of that should not be underestimated.
Yeah.
And I think it is completely underestimated all the time. People, because it's the people who are always just seeing themselves all the time that it's just the standard, the norm. You know? They have no idea what it's like to just never ever see yourself in something. And so when women and people of color and different abilities see themselves for just a moment on screen, it's a big deal.
Dude, it's exciting.
It's a really
It is. It feels so good. And the other thing, this is something that we said we were going to talk about, and I don't necessarily think we need to skew the conversation that way, but we're kind of talking about like, what does it mean to you to be a woman as a nerd in this nerd culture and so on. And it kind of just reminded me of that, because you're talking about Wonder Woman costumes having to be tutus, and I'm like, I want my Spider-Gwen. Like, can we just get this? Can we make this happen? And it's also like seeing yourself in male characters. It's because male, like the stereotypical male attributes of like a person are like what are sought after. So like that calm, collected, that like badass, that strong that we saw with Xena and things like that. And this kind of put down of being weak. So like we can't have you have to be a badass woman, and you have to follow these male kind of like characteristics or things that we associate with maleness. And then that's something that I also sometimes really struggle with myself. Like, okay, and where do I see my femininity in this? And also in what I'm viewing, and do I devalue this character because they had this moment of weakness, or do I need them to constantly be this strong, badass chick? And it just kind of reminded me of that. It was something we said we're going to talk about, but I don't know that we need to, but it just kind of like, okay, that brought it to mind, and kind of considering that as well, especially with Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And with that, another episode of Friends Talking Nerdies in the books. We thank you all for listening. This is Tim Jousma. Tune in again next week for part 3 of this discussion on women in pop culture. I was really, really, really happy when Asia, Shelby, and Meredith agreed to be on the show to talk about this. I think I mentioned it last week, but I'll mention it again here. One part of nerd culture that kind of gets overlooked is the fact that a lot of times the only voices you really hear discussing this type of stuff are white guys like me, and there's nothing wrong with that per se. Otherwise, why would I want to have a podcast, period? But there needs to be other voices heard, simply because if people don't hear the experiences of other people, of people whose lives will just be dramatically different from theirs for whatever reason, you are not going to be able to essentially have empathy. You're not going to be able to see life from other people's perspective. And, representation, even in the podcast world, when talking about pop culture stuff, is important. I mean, representation for representation's sake is not always a good thing, but when it's done the right way, which I think we did with this episode, it can really open some eyes and make you think. And hopefully we've been able to accomplish that so far. If you've liked what you've heard, definitely subscribe. This year, since we're going into year 2 of Friends Talking Nerdy, we want to do what we can to increase our audience. So if you like what you hear, share it with people on social media. Spread the word. Again, we're the little podcast that could. We're not, NPR quality audio sound or anything like that, but we're going to keep on going until until we find some level of an audience. I mean, we got a great audience now, not the biggest in the world, of course, but every little bit counts. We just want to grow what we have. So if you like what you hear, do us a favor, share an episode on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever your social media of choice is. Let folks know that you like this show. The more people that listen, the more we can expand. The more we can expand, the more we can do with this show. So please, please, please share what you like. Now, once again, tune in again next week for part 3 of our discussion on women in pop culture. And with that, let's bring you to Brother Love.
It's that time again, McMahon. Afraid you're right. Brother Love. I don't know why he thanks people every time.
Thank you.
He's a gracious man.
Sister.
Great humanitarian.
It is indeed a pleasure to introduce to you one of the premier managers here in the World Wrestling Federation. And she certainly lives up to her name, Sensational Sherry.
Oh, boy. What? Hello, world. I bet you dream of women like that at night, McMahon. No, Jesse, not my type.
Welcome.
Brother Love seems to be impressed.
Wow, welcome, Sister Sensational.
Thank you, brother. Love you looking great tonight as always. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you the greatest wrestler of all time, the next undisputed World Wrestling Federation champion, none other than the Macho Man, Randy Savage!
I beg to differ with that. The next undisputed World Wrestling Federation champion, huh? That could very well happen. If it does, I think it could very well happen with a little assistance from Sensational Sherry.
Welcome, Brother Macho.
There are conspiracies against people. Oh, yeah, there are. There are plots against people. Yeah, that's true. And there's one going on right now against the Macho Man Randy Savage, the greatest wrestler who ever lived, by Hulk Hogan and Brutus the Barber Beefcake. Cause each of them realize that one-on-one that they can't beat the Macho Man Randy Savage. No, they can't. So they are thinking about double-teaming the madness. They're thinking about double-teaming me any chance that they get. Possibly in a parking lot. That would be bad. Yeah, one-on-one, no problem. Two-on-one, possible problem. But it's a lucky thing, Sensational Sherry and Brother Love, that the madness is the world's greatest problem solver. Oh, yeah, I am. I've got someone to watch my back. I got someone to look over my left shoulder and my right shoulder at the exact same time. I've got me a human wrecking machine. I've got me not a wrestler, but a brawler. Sensational Sherry. Right now, tell the entire world who the human wrecking
didn't expect this.
Very interesting, McMahon.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
I wonder what Hogan and Beefcake will have to say about this. Look at that man.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.